Guys, welcome back. It is Racer X, and as you know, recently I did pick up my 2020 Mustang GT Premium, and I just want to kind of address something. I did a little bit of research and wanted to put a little video together for you guys about sort of a misconception, or maybe there's some truth to it, about is the Mustang really a crowd killer? I hear this all the time, Mustangs are crowd killers. Well, is that an unfair statement, or is there some validity to that? Well, today I will tell you what I have found out. It should be a fun one. Also, guys, if you're new to my channel, do me a huge favor, hit subscribe for me. Lots of great stuff coming up this year. Follow me on Instagram, and here we go. We got the 1,000 horsepower helmet. Truth is, Mustangs have actually been around since, well, 1965, and there have been a lot of different versions of the Mustang. Matter of fact, we're currently on the 6th generation Mustang, and for 2023, as long as everything goes to plan, that should be the 7th generation of the Mustang. It has been a very successful platform for Ford for just a really long time, and it didn't always have that kind of perception as being a crowd killer. At some point, social media or a few videos or whatever kind of leaked out about about a Mustang barreling into a crowd of people at some event, and then Mustangs kind of got tagged with this sort of crowd killer type stigma, right? But it's interesting to try and do research on this whole crowd killer thing. It's like when you go to Google and you just put in like people mowers or bowling with cars or cars that seek crowds. I mean, it's kind of strange because the information is just not readily available. Yes, maybe you can find a video or two, but it's hard to find statistics. And as we know, statistics can also tell a very different story. So how can we substantiate if this crowd killer myth thing is really true? I mean, do Mustangs really fly into crowds more often than other sports cars or other cars in general? So I've been just doing all sorts of research trying to figure out if there's some validity to this. And I did find an article written by Forbes magazine, and they claim that from 2013 to 2017, that obviously they did a study on here, and the most fatalities per 1 billion vehicle miles, and they did a list of their top 14. I'll actually put a link to this thing in the description below. But it came very interesting, the results of this. So the number 11 car on the list was the Chevy Camaro. Keep in mind, this is the 2013 to 2017 model. The number 10 car on the list, the Dodge Challenger, and the number 2 car on the list was the Chevy Corvette. Interestingly enough, the Mustang didn't make the list. And we're talking about fatalities here, so we're talking about people actually in the car, I believe, as opposed to like outside of the car. So as you can see, that's part of what makes doing the research on this sort of thing difficult. But it was almost all small cars, no trucks, no SUVs, anything like that. Now, I did find another study that gave me kind of an interesting stat. This is actually from last year. It claims that Mustang was the number 10 on their list and the number 1 sports car in terms of deaths per million registrations. So a little bit of a weird stat there because it's not actually measuring whether or not it hits crowds. I think it's really measuring how safe the vehicle is inside, like when you're traveling as a passenger. So that really doesn't give us the information that we need. Now, in my quest for knowledge on this subject, I actually saw a couple other really interesting stats. I'm going to tell you about this. So, believe it or not, 3,700 people, actually a little over that, but that's how many people die every day in car-related accidents worldwide. That is a lot of people every day. Also, the risk of fatal accidents, when you talk about 16 to 19, that demographic is double the rate of the next demographic up, which is the 20 to 27-year-old demographic. So kind of an interesting little stat there. Also, males are twice as likely to crash or have a fatal accident when compared to females. So I don't know if it's just the guys like showing off, or I don't know, maybe the girls aren't texting as much on their phone or whatever, but that is a really interesting statistic to me. But once again, this isn't helping us find out if Mustangs are crowd killers. The thought did enter my mind that, maybe part of the problem is that you've got a younger group of people that's buying Mustangs. And when you really kind of look at the statistics, it does say that typically the younger the drivers, the more accidents they tend to get in. I realize that's kind of on a larger scale, but there may be some, something to that. But when I actually looked up the numbers for the average age of some of these sports car buyers, I was really surprised. So believe it or not, in a separate study done by Jalopnik just last year, the average age of Challenger buyers is 51 years old. I never would have thought that. We're talking about new cars here. Believe it or not, that's actually younger than the average car buyer, which is 53, and also younger than the average Mustang and Camaro buyer. So kind of interesting. They say the average Mustang buyer is 54 years old, or at least when it talks to about brand new cars. So so the age thing, I don't really know if that plays a factor in why maybe Mustangs would be considered crowd killers and maybe Challengers would not be, or Camaros or Corvettes or whatever else. Kind of interesting. I also thought maybe there was something just in the design of the Mustang that maybe would cause the Mustang to just crash more often. So I had to really think about it, what would there be? And the only thing that I could think of is really, starting in 2015, the Mustang went to an independent rear suspension, IRS. Now, before that, they had a solid rear axle. Now, solid rear axles are great for drag cars. They're very strong. And they're just robust, but they actually are not really the best for taking corners and things like that. So maybe that was part of it prior to, the 2015 model year. Maybe there are more of those cars that crashed, but when I tried to look it up, there was really nothing to be able to substantiate that the models that came before 2015 crashed any more often than the models that came after. So it's kind of hard to say if IRS plays any role in these cars crashing or not. So when you're driving around in a Mustang, obviously I'm in my brand new Mustang. Now I realize we're not just talking about the Mustang GT, which is what this is. It's Mustangs across the board from the 6-cylinder all the way up to the GT 500s. And there's really no specific model year or anything like that. We're talking about just Mustangs in general. So, but the way these things make power, this is a 5-liter engine. When you talk about some of the competitors in the Corvettes and the 6.2s and the Camaros, and then of course when you jump up to the 6.4 and the Scat Pack, and it's just some of the other stuff that's out there, those cars make more torque than these do. So at the end of the day, because this makes power in a more linear fashion, it really doesn't feel like it wants to get away from you. It doesn't feel like it's trying to step out on you quite as bad. It's not that the car won't do it, but it just feels like you have a lot of control, at least to me, when you drive this car. So I'm just kind of curious how it came to be that, if it is true that more people do crash the Mustang, how is that? Is it just is a maturity thing when it comes to drivers? Because as we know, we see a fair amount of Scat Packs and Hellcats being crashed and all that kind of stuff. So there's no real evidence to actually substantiate that the Mustang crashes any more often than any other sports car that's out there. So really strange. And that is about it. So in reality, I haven't been able to find any real reason to believe that Mustangs hit more crowds than really any other car, but the stigma's out there. It is what it is. I can't change it. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think. If there's some other piece of information that I missed, shout it out in the comments below, and I will catch you on the next one. So until then, Racer X.